Oh, how fancy.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, so this lovely device here that I got from GameStop. So we had actually saw one at Universal Studios. It was like $375. And then I went to GameStop to actually get a purple lightsaber because apparently those are being discontinued at Galaxy's Edge. And so I was like, oh, well, that means that the purple lightsabers in general are going to go up. So I knew that this one over here had one, and it sold out, of course. But they happened to have this thing, and then they were. No, it's okay. Yeah, no, I wish. My Sylvia's over here admiring your background. She's like, damn, look at his library. I'm like, so anyway, so I ended up getting this thing for 100. I think it was like 116 bucks or something like that. And I was like, yes, lights up and everything, dude. Like this thing is, and it's really heavy too. Like this thing is solid.
Oh, and it's got the sound effects. Nice.
Yeah, dude. It's nuts. I mess with my kids all the time. I'll just run in, hit them with it, and so, when they're acting up. But so
it's a virtual background, Sylvia. I can make it pretty much anything I want.
Oh, that's freaking sweet. See, I need to get me a virtual background because my background sucks. The best thing I got is my little.
There's a couple included in Zoom. Like you can just grab one from Zoom. I think they have a couple by default.
I'm gonna have to do that. But so I'll tell you what was holding us up, right? So initially, I didn't realize that we had some kind of baby appointment today, and I know that sounds terrible. I knew that we did, but when we had the conversation, I for some reason thought it was gonna end much sooner, and it actually did end up getting out early, but. It's like on and off storming down here because I guess the hurricane is approaching a lot faster. And we also ran into another random issue. I don't want to get the TMI for too many people, but essentially there's this plug that exists inside of a woman that when it comes out, it's not very long till birth. Could be anywhere between 1 and 2 weeks. But for Ren, it was literally the same day. So that came out while we were at this appointment. So it could happen. She's not showing any other signs, but we were kind of all like, everybody was like, is this happening today? So thankfully it's so far no, but I hear her in the back talking to the midwife. Anyway, hopefully I do want him to come early, but I don't want him to come too early because if we don't go till next week, we can't do it natural. So she wants to do it natural, and if it's too early, we have to go to the hospital. She doesn't want that. So 1 more week, kiddo. Hold out. Oh, jerk. Oh man, it's funny. But anyway, so I wanted to at least talk about a few things today. I definitely wanted to talk about. I'll throw it on the list. We'll just go ahead and throw up a whole summarization of what we're going to talk about because we completely went off the rails. At least talk about this newest episode of Loki before the new one comes out. So for the moment, first things first, and you know what? I just actually rewatched it because my dad hadn't seen it. So we put it on for him like 2 minutes ago, and the look on his face when the ending rolled, he was just like he didn't, he really didn't even understand what he had just watched. He was like, huh? Like I could see in his face, he's like, but isn't the show called Loki? So spoiler alert.
He got man.
Episode.
Did you not let him watch the stinger?
I did, but like it was just so funny that he was like what? Like he was completely just like blown away. And you know what? My reaction, I gotta admit, they got me because I've been trying to like figure out little twists here and there. Like it's almost like you're trying to anticipate the twists, which maybe in some ways makes it better because you think, oh, I've got this figured out, and meanwhile you're close, but not quite there, or maybe you're completely off base, and then you're just like, oh, they got me. And I think this show's been pretty good at that.
Well, I think that Marvel in general and Feige in specific has gotten the point, which is that if you make any character sacred, then people aren't going to be able to suspend their belief in ways that makes the show interesting, or the movie, or whatever they're doing, whatever project it is, interesting for the audience.
No, yeah, I mean, they definitely have put an emphasis on how do we play with the audience's expectations, but not in a way that feels like that's what they're deliberately trying to do. Like I got a couple of hints. I have a cousin. He works for Rolling Stone, and so he writes things, and he's really good. But sometimes his analysis gets a little bit like he's in the industry and he sees things from a different perspective. So
Mhm.
he feels like he kind of understands things a little differently. So he'll kind of go, no, that's not what they're doing, because typically it shouldn't be, or formulaically won't be. And so he's like, no, they're just subverting the expectations. But if they do that like double time, like I think everyone was convinced, anybody who's like really trying to dig into these episodes was convinced that the previous episode set up Loki to reveal that he was enchanting her, or that someone was being enchanted. It was like a blatant misdirect, because it was done subtly enough for like the average, viewer would
Right.
go, "Oh no, I didn't see that." But then the keen viewer is going, "No, no, this is what's happening," and they're like, "Psych, that's not happening for anybody." And so it's like, damn, it's done carefully, very carefully, and so it's very interesting how they've set the show up to kind of, like we talked about this before, how they've sort of blew up their own premise in the first and second episodes,
Hmm.
and then dial it back in the third to kind of just sort of let you breathe and sort of get to know Loki and Sylvie, while also trying to maybe feel like there's something else going on. But maybe because they didn't do that, it allowed you to just really feel it out. And so his perspective was that they were dragging the episodes out to fit the runtime rather than for the sake of the story. And I said, I don't. I actually think that because we got that moment, because we got that time to really understand those characters and go with them on a journey that ultimately went nowhere, you really felt a sense of like, oh crap, like for them, they're experiencing a really downtrodden point in their life. Like this is an extreme low for both of these characters simultaneously. And so how does the audience feel? You feel like crap. And then the next episode starts, rolls right into it, and then they just dive it down further. And you're like, wow. Like, so I think by the end of that episode, like I would sit there like jaw on the floor and then jaw on the floor again. And then opening credits or like the post credit scene, and it was just like, uh, you know, so
I I think they've done a really good job. I think that they're leaning into, God of Mischief, really God of Misdirection. Uh,
yeah, which
the
they
Yeah.
name dropped in the episode, which is great.
So I suspect that there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to get pulled together over these last 4 episodes.
Aren't there only two left? I thought it was only six.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I think it's the
Whew.
last two.
Bro, you just got me really happy. I was about to be like, what? IMDb,
What
like,
more? Yeah, uh, but we knew that Loki was a setup to introduce. Well, to introduce something, and it turns out that it's likely that he's introducing Kang.
well, I think he's gonna. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that, which I hope it's not the whole Mephisto thing. There's a lot of people like it's Mephisto, and now there's it's Kang. I think it's very, if not directly, it's indirectly, it's Kang.
Mhm.
But I also think it was very smart in the way that they thought that WandaVision was going to be the introduction to the multiverse, and that um, they thought, okay, well, Falcon and the Winter Soldier isn't gonna have that. It's totally different. But they were very smart to realize that Loki had the most broad appeal. He's been around since Phase One. He's arguably one of the most, like he's top five most popular characters for sure. And they knew bringing him to tell that story would really give a lot of general audiences a sense of what's coming in Spider-Man: No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, and Quantumania, and more than likely there will be some ramifications for at least I'm guessing Fantastic Four. So
I I feel
it's
you
pretty
on that.
good.
I think that the other thing that they're doing, and it's really clever, is introducing variant Lokis means that they can have anybody play Loki going forward.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's why like Tom Holland not being in Thor: Love and Thunder is a smart move also, because it also gives a sense of we don't know what will happen to this character afterwards, even though we can all be certain that Tom Hiddleston will be involved in some point. but you can also play around with variant Lokis. Now we can also play around with different variations of characters. Like, you know, there's rumors that Chris Evans has signed on for like a couple more appearances, not necessarily full films, but for cameo appearances. But what's interesting is most people suspect something that I think is entirely ridiculous, which is a lot of people are suspecting the whole, you know, he's going to show up in a storyline where it's like, you know, he was Hydra and they're going to do the Hydra Cap story. I'm like, no. Literally, the name drop in Avengers wasn't a clue to something more. It was just a nice reference, but to both the film and the comic. But they're not going to do a whole film about that. It's not necessary. I think, which would be absolutely hilarious, is if Chris Evans came back to play the Human Torch as a variant Human Torch. Like, they could very well. I've also heard significant rumors from people that are, and this comes from lists of, you know, they have, whenever the agents make calls, these things have to be disclosed to certain people. Like, there have been phone calls and offers made to Hugh Jackman, which he's acknowledged, but they've noticed a different change. Before he said, yeah, I'm not doing that, and he was very serious about it. However, some people have noted that the last call that was made last time, like, even though it was seemingly a turn down, he has not been in the gym, like, at least with the training regimen that he was doing before, since Logan. Like, that was it. He was like, I'm glad to not have to do this anymore. And so people noted that his workout regimen has changed and has been significantly more intense. So yeah, it could be rumors, but I firmly believe that Marvel is setting up a Secret Wars. And the only way to drive something forward where you can use multiple iterations of the characters while paying homage to the past and also setting a stage for the future would be introducing a new Wolverine, of course, and throwing off the expectations. But then in the Secret Wars, you know, Wolverine, you know, Spider-Man statics, and it's Hugh Jackman, and you're like, wait, what? I mean, that could be a thing. Or
I get the impression
versions.
that part of this setup is introducing alternate timeline, alternate universe variants of major characters in a way that will make Secret Wars slightly less weird.
Yes, of course.
And you know, having Hugh Jackman show up as MCU Wolverine, and then get, you know, offed because there's no way he's sticking around.
No,
this is a Harrison Ford visitation of Wolverine. It's interesting. I think, but again, I think they got to lean into.
So I think that's the other thing, is that they're going to set
the Wolverine introduction.
Really high.
Stakes are so high, right? If you introduce a new Wolverine, stakes are really high.
Yeah. And if you kill him, you've just really set the stakes really high. So I mean, I firmly believe that that's what we'll see. If not, I mean, I honestly don't see how they could make Secret Wars one film. And I don't think the first one will be a Secret Wars film, even though I think it will set up Secret Wars. I think, again, the first thing we're going to see is a Dark Avengers film that by the end of it is secretly the very beginning of a Secret Wars film that ends up like killing a bunch of characters and then leads to an actual like Secret War Avengers movie. And then we'll go from there. But
you know,
I think it's going to be a while before we see Avengers. I think it's going to be a good while before we see that title again.
Yeah. I'm getting comfortable with the idea that they're going to go in a completely different direction with some of the characters they're going to be introducing now. The only ones that are going to be played straight are the Fantastic Four because they don't make any sense any other way.
Well, I do find it interesting, though, that if they're casting this guy who was cast as Kang, if Kang is a distant relative of Reed Richards, I find the casting to be very interesting. And I think that might be telling about who will play Reed Richards, because I think we're getting to a point now where I honestly get upset with a lot of the controversy behind changing the characters as long as they meet the same beats. Like, there's nothing different about Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury than comic book Nick Fury, other than his appearance. It's the character is virtually the same, at least in different iterations. there's a slight difference, but it's not enough to be like, it's not the same character at all. Like there's a difference. And so, I think what DC's doing with the whole like, hey, by the way, look over here, we're making a black Superman, like that looks like you're pandering. I'm not saying I don't want to see a black Superman. I'm absolutely willing to see that. What I think you're doing is the way that you've announced it and the way that you're doing it, and also how disrespectful to announce it on Henry Cavill's birthday. Like, Christ.
If WB managed to do something without completely mismanaging it, I would be very shocked at this point. I don't think that their studio leadership is competent. They really know how to make money, but they don't know how to do anything else. So
and even money, like, I mean, I was watching this guy was breaking it down and saying that like the commercialization, or rather the industrialization of these films, is kind of what's made them bad. If you look at with Feige, there's two things that automatically make the MCU have a leg up. One is that you already have a base of something that people generally like. Now that could be easily messed up, and that's the thing people don't understand. That's not easy. That doesn't mean this especially in the MCU.
They almost biffed it with Iron Man 2. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot. I mean, there's been a few somewhat missteps that you can argue, but the reality is they've also learned that if you go back in a later film and add a little thing, it kind of can retroactively make it better. So, they've learned and they continue to learn, and that's because they're paying attention. That's because the other aspect of it is having a leadership like Feige who understands not only the material, but understands what the people want, because he's also a fan. Because he's looking at it saying, well, this is what I would want. And then also taking into consideration what fans want without pandering to it and saying, oh, you want that? Oh, yeah. Like, no, he's taking into consideration and saying, for the sake of the story, that we can do certain things, we can hint at other things, and he understands how to play it. Warner Bros. Does the opposite. They're like, we can't have Justice League with time travel. Nobody understands time travel. And then an Endgame comes out. They're like, hey, we didn't put time travel in our film. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're just like, something pops up and you're like, oh yeah, that. Let's do that. Like, no, like you have people that clearly understand this stuff. And then what blows my mind is you get Jeff Johns, who should know this stuff. And
they put out the call for scripts for Flashpoint, I want to say like 8 years ago now. Like they clearly intended to do Flashpoint at some point. Like they wanted the reset button.
And
they just sat
fine.
on it. They sat on it. And like it was such a weird choice.
The weird thing is like they didn't understand that what you could have done is make the darkest films possible, right? Then hit the reset button with the Flash. Make the lightest films possible. Use that as a measurement and say, which do people like more? Go both timelines if you wanted to. Just throw this, just go nuts with it. See what the fans like. And then, the multiverse, whatever. Like, oh, we have a crisis. And now the crisis has to fix it. But they don't even know their own material because they don't care. Right. So if they had done that and they'd said, oh, we could totally do this. Star Trek did it, and it was fine. I liked it. I liked the first one. I think it was headed in a good direction. It was divisive, but I think that was a good change of pace. Some people would argue it went off the rails after the second film. Sure, but
I think it went off the rails during the second film when it was like, oh, we're going to subvert people's expectations by giving them exactly what they expect.
Well, I think the other thing too is that and Abrams said it himself, he made the reveal for Khan, not realizing that the new audience that you just brought in had no idea what you're talking about. So it wasn't a reveal for the new audience, and that was the problem. Now, if you had subverted expectations by like introducing a very Khan-like character, or had this person come out, and do all the Khan things, and
if Benedict Cumberbatch had played a character who was not named Khan, everyone would have been like, "It's brilliant." Like, I mean, but also, the problem was that he was Khan.
Also, it could have been great if that. I agree with you. What I would have done is he's not Khan. I would have instead, at the very end, had I think he was attached to it, but or maybe that was just a rumor. I would have then revealed that inside one of the frozen pods was like Benicio del Toro, exactly in Khan garb. That way the fans would have been like, oh, wait a minute, okay. So see, then it would have connected for those people, and then all the new people would have like, wait, but who's that guy? And then it would have created interest rather than what it was. And he was like, my name is Khan, and the people for fans were like, oh, I called it, and then everybody else in the office was like, called what?
Yeah.
So
I-
it's, you know,
my struggle with J.J. Abrams is that J.J. Abrams makes good films, and the order of the day with a popcorn film is making a good film. If you make a good film, people will come watch the popcorn film. Got it. That's how you make money in Hollywood. The problem is that J.J. Abrams is very, very bad at closing loops.
yes.
He introduces threads and then those threads go nowhere, or worse, he closes those threads on a very like sour note. So he's like, oh yeah, all those things that happened in the last movie, we erased those because time travel. Like,
Well,
what?
he's very good at opening. Again, it's the mystery box. I'm holding this thing in front of you, and you're so interested. But once that happens, there's like so many different ideas. I feel maybe that's what it is because he's very creative. But I feel
Mhm.
like there's so much that he can't choose a specific direction to go, and it ends up being the expectations are too high. So somebody else can take that and go somewhere with it, which is fine. But then he can't close the loop. You're right. I
Yeah.
don't think
I
I don't
love
think he wants to. I think he loves the material so much that it's almost like I don't want it to end, and you can't have that. You need someone brutal who's like,
Yeah.
that guy's dead. This one, no, like happy ending for this one, but not for this guy. And he
Right.
wants, and
He
you
needs an
get it.
editor who's empowered to kill all the characters. Yeah.
Or at least, because you look at Endgame and you realize that there's a couple moments in Endgame that like Thor gets to say goodbye to his mother. Iron Man goes to, Tony gets to say goodbye to his dad. And Cap gets this longing stare at someone and doesn't get to say goodbye to them. So you're looking at this and going, I feel like two of these guys are going to get it, and then the other one isn't, and then only one gets it. And you're like, oh, okay, well, damn. It was the very obvious choice, but you didn't actually think they were going to go through with it because it already hinted at his death so many times. I did because I felt like that was closing the narrative. But my biggest fear was that somebody else was going to get it too. That's why Black Widow's death
played
was
it really
so,
well.
like, oh my god.
Feige played it really well by having the Chris's say that they were in contract negotiations, as in they didn't have deals.
Yeah.
So like you're sitting there going like, there's no way they don't have deals. But at the same time, when you put out a press release and you start creating the churn in Hollywood saying like, hey, these guys are in contract negotiations going into Endgame, everybody's like, whoa, characters are going to die.
So that's why I think, and this is why I think Feige gets it, because he doesn't just understand. And I listen. This is kind of my pitch for why I think they should have awards for marketing, because you might have a totally lackluster film and your marketing is great. So that guy deserves an award because he made you go to the movies and watch a movie that was garbage because he put this together. So that's my pitch for that. But the other aspect is Feige understands both aspects. He understands how this whole Spider-Man thing, people are losing their minds waiting for this trailer. It's ready to go. I guarantee you this thing is more than likely it's going to pop up in Black Widow, but he knows. And he also knows all the chatter. He knows these people are saying that, what's it called?
Well,
that
the plan for Spider-Man is clear at this point. I mean, we're getting the Spider-Verse, which means that Marvel can use whichever Spider-Mans that Sony's willing to let them use, and Sony can use whatever Spider-Man, tests the best.
So here's my thing though, and I think they're going to still drag it out. So it's almost a certainty that Garfield and Maguire are doing this. Now, what I think, and I think it's smart, they're not going to, and I'm sure Feige has probably had many conversations with Sony on this, because I guarantee Sony's wanted to pull the trigger on it. They're not going to reveal either of those two characters in the trailers.
Oh, of course not. No,
they're not going to do it. However,
because they're not playing the straight up Spider-Mans they played before. I guarantee you Tobey Maguire is playing Spider-Man Noir. Guarantee it.
Well, there's a lot of people that believe he's going to play Uncle Ben. I can see that. But I feel like it's not enough, and I think he's honestly going. I think that he's actually going to end up playing his Spider-Man, but he's also when Tom Holland sees him, he's going to say Uncle Ben, because his Uncle Ben looks like Tobey Maguire. That's what I think. But
okay.
And that's just going to create the automatic, because remember his mentor's gone, so he's going to need a new mentor, and having another Peter Parker isn't enough. Somebody has to fill in that. They've not talked about Uncle Ben. So that's an easy transition. And if
But
you're Peter
I'm
Parker from another
I'm
universe
willing
happens to
to
look like Uncle
bet.
Ben,
Yeah, I'm
and you
willing to
gotta,
bet
they're related.
uh,
He could look like him.
everybody's going, oh yeah, they're just going to reintroduce Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire playing their Spider-Man, and I think that's not the case. I think they're playing different ones. Like I think Andrew Garfield is going to play Ben Riley.
I mean, I'm down for that. But what I do think though is that the other characters, obviously the Sinister Six, that's what I mean. It's painfully
Yes,
obvious at this
we
point.
we built up to it. We have really good actors playing a couple of them already.
Now, what's really interesting is that how they've been avoiding the conversation. So Jamie Foxx was pretty much confirmed. Like
Mhm.
it's not even like they talked to him and he was like, oh yeah, but I'm not blue this time. It's a little different. And then he kind of showed up and was like, oh, dialed it back. And then they asked Willem Dafoe like, hey, what do you got coming out? And he was like, I'm working on. And he goes, you know what? I'll wait on that one. And you're like, okay. I mean, that's not a. It's reaching, but maybe because he's going to be an Aquaman, so maybe it's not. It's reaching, but I'm fairly positive. But then the big one, they go and ask Alfred Molina. He's like, yeah, I'm in it. Yeah, I'm too old for these games. And
Yeah.
then so they go and they ask Kevin Feige. They asked him on like one of these I think it was a red carpet for Black Widow, and they were like, hey, so are we going to see more of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character from Falcon and the Winter Soldier? And he he says, why don't you ask Alfred Molina? So if that's not a confirmation that he's well aware that one, he didn't want Alfred Molina in a damn thing, but two, yeah, we're messing with the audience and we're going to drag this out. And they're definitely going to show all the villains in the trailer, but they're absolutely not going to show Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. So that way, that part of the rumor feels like, see, that's not happening. And then when people go to the movie theaters, they're going to be like, what the hell? Because it's going to happen. And so, I mean, it just is. Like, at this point, the amount of pressure, and let's be honest, Tom Holland's contract's almost up. And Sony already knows that if they pull this off, they can go and do a whole bunch of other Spider-Man movies without Tom Holland or the
Right.
MCU, and that's exactly what they want.
Yeah. No,
So-
I again, yes, the Spider-Verse being introduced in the live action version lets them basically means test multiverse Spider-Man and see what audiences respond to. Like I suspect that everybody's like, yeah, they're just going to go with Miles Morales after this. I'm willing to bet that there's another Spider-Man who means tests better with audiences that they're going to end up going with.
So no, I agree with you. And here's another thing. And I think Miles Morales as a character has I mean, the video game was saying a lot. Like
I like the character.
Oh, no,
I like the character. He's a good character. He has a great arc that is same but different than Peter Parker's, which is really important because
Yes.
Spider-Man being relatable is key.
So
but at the same time, like we already know what his journey is.
No, but I think that's the key. The key to it is that I realized this. I looked at the timeline for when Into the Spider-Verse came out, and I mean, or at least started. They started. I mean, this movie took 4.5 years. So I looked at that timeline, and it married up with Homecoming. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, they already set up with this guy Donald Glover's character that he's the Prowler, or at least before he becomes the Prowler, he's Aaron, but. He was originally supposed to like get a phone call and say, "Oh, Miles, I can't pick you up," and they cut that. And Feige cut that. He specifically said, "Oh no, we've got some things, we've got plans for Miles Morales, and so we didn't want to introduce him that way." Yeah. That already tells you right there that Feige was the one who for sure pulled that. Disney, like Sony, was the one that like, "Yeah, well, this is great," and he was like, "No, listen, back it up. You guys got Into Spider-Verse coming out. Trust me, back it up." And I think the long haul for that is that they're already realizing that you can't introduce Miles Morales now because he's the predecessor. He is like when this dude when the Falcon takes the mantle of Captain America, and it was so widely accepted. Like a lot of people were worried that this was going to be a very divisive thing.
The only thing that people hated was the costume.
And I don't know, I thought it was cool. I liked it, but the goggles, but it still makes sense. But anyway, it was surprisingly really well accepted. And so you realize at that point that Star Wars, they didn't do it correctly. That other avenues. You didn't do it the way you needed to. It felt right when it happened. You wanted it to happen. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel unearned. It felt earned. And so I think that they realized that Tom Holland Spider-Man has a lot more to do, and there's no sense in setting up even a remotely close to a replacement, let alone someone for him to mentor, because he's still being mentored. Now, arguably, the Secret Wars is Spider-Man's story. If you remember the Secret Wars, that was the point where Spider-Man really stepped up the game and
Right.
went
Yeah.
from
Well, that
neighborhood
was
hero to
all of the bigger deal heroes are incapacitated or can't act, and all of the street level heroes aren't capable. So it's gonna be me. Like,
and
that's where
it
it was.
So it's great because this is going to be, and it's already foreshadowing his arc in a sense that his arc isn't tied to Tony Stark. He feels that it is. He feels he has this legacy to live up to, but the legacy is different. See, Tony Stark, people expected that of him. When Spider-Man steps up, no one expects that. Like, he's just going to constantly get, okay, you helped out and you're here and you're awesome. But at the end of the day, nobody expects you to go the extra mile. And so Spider-Man's arc will be a combination of Tony's arc and Captain America's arc, where Spider-Man will be the one standing there like Cap was, strapping the shield and just limping off. But except Spider-Man won't just be limping. He'll be able to take a hell of a lot more. And you're like, damn, like, this kid, he's a combination of the two characters' arcs in a sense. And I think Feige said it a million times. Spider-Man, that's Stan Lee's favorite character. That's Feige's favorite character. Like, it's a lot of people's favorite character. And that wasn't the intention. Spider-Man was always supposed to be a low-level hero and just exceeded to flagship character in every single iteration.
I don't know that that's true. Like, Stan Lee made it very clear that he intended for Spider-Man to be a street hero. Like, his battles were supposed to be small but meaningful for the character because he was writing a character
He
story.
was an everyman.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the intergalactic aspect, like, for example, I think the cartoon back in the 90s did a really good job. I don't remember what the storyline was, but somebody had, I think it was Madam Web, who had told him that he was meant to be, like, in the future, that he's regarded as being the greatest hero of all time. And he didn't understand that. And he was like, am I supposed to save? It ended up leading to being like, he thought, oh, I have to save the universe. And she was like, no, you're not considered the best because you defeated some giant alien or anything. You were considered the best because you were always there, because you never quit, because the average person looked at you and thought, I could be that. And it was a different standard that he didn't understand, and he would never get to that point until he could, or maybe he would never understand it. But that was the point, was that the average person could resonate with Spider-Man, whereas the average person isn't Tony Stark. The average person isn't, these other things, where Spider-Man could be anybody. And I think that's what Into the Spider-Verse was so beautiful at. It dissected what it meant to be Spider-Man outside of just Peter Parker. And in the same way that the Lego movie dissected Batman in a really funny way, but really drilled down to the core of, why, like, who is this character, in a way that could not, I don't think, can be done in film. Maybe in a television show, but not in a film, because it's not enough to explore it in that way. And so Into the Spider-Verse did a really beautiful thing with doing just, practically a love letter to both Peter Parker and, Spider-Man in and of itself. And so I really think that Feige knows we got to push Miles Morales way down the road, because Tom Holland still has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think that the real issue is that Kevin Feige doesn't want to do the heavy lifting on Miles Morales. Like, he it's one of those things that, like, they ran a deal with Sony and said, hey, we want to get Spider-Man because he's important to, the cohesion of the MCU. We need that character to be a transition point. But at the same time, like, why is he going to sit there and do Sony's heavy lifting for them? Why would he allow them to introduce Miles Morales in a MCU marquee movie and get nothing out of it?
Yeah.
I think that what he's doing here with this movie is the reasonable man solution, which is to introduce a concept that they're already introducing in the broader MCU, which is, you know, variant versions of heroes and probably villains that'll probably come down as well too. I mean, Loki's an anti-hero, which is whatever.
Well, this version of Loki is
Right. Well, and the
variant.
Enchantress is also an anti-hero. Traditionally
And you
speaking.
know, in a great way too, it avoids the controversy with like people going, "Oh, that's not comic accurate," because she's a variant. So in the same issue that she's a variant of Loki, she's also a variant of the Enchantress. So kudos to you. You guys sidestepped controversy.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Brilliant.
I mean, plus you're sitting there going like, you know, the actress that they hired, they're going to use again. There's no reason to not use her. And it becomes an issue of like, do we use her in the same way as Loki? And the answer is probably not. But at the same time, like she's a variant, man. Like she doesn't have a home world, a home timeline. So you can just insert her wherever you want to.
You know, the other thing too is, you know, we could end up seeing Mobius again in a completely different capacity.
Right.
Like,
Well, so that's if you like. I think I'm the only person that remembers this because the whole time variant authority was like very 90s
obscure.
Marvel. Nobody was paying attention to Marvel in the 90s, except for people like me who came up in comics and were still reading comics in the 90s. Mark Grunwald did some very, you know, fourth wall pressure things with Mobius because he wanted to change the way that people look at comics, but especially the way that people in the industry looked at comics.
Yeah, and I think it was worthwhile. I never read the comics that had those, but that's because in the 90s, I was reading mostly X-Men comics.
Right.
Like that was, I mean, that was
As
just,
one does. Yeah.
yeah, like I was Spider-Man, X-Men, like, so some of the other stuff that had like at the time, Thor and some of these comics had been a little less, I don't say popular, but I guess maybe less popular. And so, you know, that my interest is just different. And so I didn't really have an introduction to the TVA. So now I've gone back and I've kind of looked at some stuff, and it's also with different lens. So I can clearly see what they were doing. And I think it's great. Like they were basically saying like, we've created all these tiers of gods, and yet, you know, it's kind of nuts. So let's just go ahead and create this completely weird bureaucracy that supersedes all these gods. And we're going to make it just like totally banal in a way. And I don't know, it's cool. I thought it was really cool.
Banal, but
I wish
also
I'd read it when I was younger.
really creepy when you start peeling layers back. Like,
which I think that came off very effectively in the show in terms of how it's presented, and also the wonderful soundtrack. Which I don't have you heard any of the details about what is it, Natalie Holt, I think her name is, who she's most famous besides Loki for throwing eggs at Simon Cowell on Britain's Got Talent.
Okay, that's a pretty good thing to be famous for.
Apparently, she was protesting what he stands for in terms of music industry. So basically, the effect of specifically shows like Britain's Got Talent have done to the music industry. And she ended up penning an op-ed saying, you know, that it was no direct disrespect at him. And in fact, she actually respected him a lot personally, but what he represented in the music industry and what the show represented was something that she felt she had to do. And she also apologized for the two guys whose song she interrupted while she totally, you know, waxed those eggs and, you know, basically made a Western omelet out of them. So then, and then she goes on to, at the very end, to thank Simon Cowell, because she said, the reality is I wouldn't be penning this op-ed if he had pressed charges. So it's pretty cool that he also, like, he took ownership of it. Like, actually, when she threw the eggs, he didn't budge. He actually stood there and he says, I probably deserve that.
My take on Simon Cowell is that he's a lot more self-aware than people would
I
believe,
think so,
based on the character he plays on television. He's playing a character.
Yeah, I don't think people get that it's a role, and you know, a lot of times people are beholden to these characters, and sometimes people don't get it, and you know, and you might not respect it, but at the end of the day, like, everybody has jobs, and sometimes I might not agree with it, and sure, the industry might be going in a terrible way, but the honest to God truth is, Is one person going to affect that? No, there's a lot of reform that needs to happen in a lot of places. And I think the general consumerism, the industrialization of all of these industries, rather, it's doing that. Like when we decided that we needed to make thousands of shoes instead of going to a shoe store and like somebody making you a custom pair of shoes that's going to last you 9 years. That's the point where things might have started getting weird. Like all of a sudden you've got these people who are collecting 100 pairs of shoes. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying just mass production of things in a sense. Like I much prefer going to a website and saying I can customize a pair of sneakers, and then those sneakers are made when I order them, and I'll wait for them, rather than having 10,000 pairs of those sneakers that end up going in a landfill because maybe the celebrity who they named them after hit somebody. And you're like, oh, we can't get rid of those. And or like the T-shirts that are produced for the Super Bowl saying that both teams win. Right. And then the team that wins, they sell those shirts, and the team that loses, those go to like Iraq. And you see all these Iraqi kids with like, the Boston wins, and you're like, they didn't win that year. Like, what are you talking about? So it's I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
consumerism
is what it is. I hesitate to say that the entertainment business has coterminous or even
no, I mean, if you
cotemporal
look at
problems with manufacturing. I think that entertainment suffered a lot when the writers stopped having the ability to really direct where they were going with shows.
I agree. I think the content creators have lost a lot of creative control. And that's a problem because the people running these businesses are executives, and they're good executives at selling a product, not necessarily this product, because you only understand selling it in mass quantities and marketing. Marketing, how to sell this to people. However, once the person's got it, they're like, this was crap. Why did I watch this? Right. And so we're losing the effect. Like, somebody pointed out, for better or for worse, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Arguably, even if you didn't enjoy it, even if you didn't like it, it was a better film than what came out in the theaters, period.
I struggle so much with Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League because it's not a movie. It's 2 movies. Like
it is.
That's the problem for me is I look at it and it's very clearly those 4 parts are very clearly 2 movies. And yes, it's better. But that's like saying that a trilogy is better than a single movie.
No, and
generally speaking, yes.
But
right?
you could have remember, you got to go back to the original plan. When they showed what was coming out, in the Comic-Con in that hall that day, it said Justice League Part 1 and Justice League Part 2. So they knew full well that you could do that. And maybe they should have done that. And it would have been fine.
Yeah.
I really don't know where like the halfway point would have been. And I imagine it would have been completely different. But the point is, the people that were excited to see this were excited to see it. And they completely just like undercut that, and they were like, "Oh, we're still gonna make a bunch of money." And you're like, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't."
Yeah. Well, I also think that there was another issue, which was that the goals of the executives with the Snyder Cut were not met, whereas the goals of the creative with the Snyder Cut were met, where he basically went out and rubbed it in their face. Yeah, we needed to do 2 movies, you jerks. Like,
and then you have HBO Max, which is their platform that you could totally utilize to put out series. Like, I still don't understand why they were like, there were all these rumors and hints of like a Harry Potter series. And all the people who were excited about Wizarding World, like you go to Universal Studios right now, and there's people that are there in their wizarding robes, and they sit on the steps, and they're hanging out like they're in a schoolyard. Like they're really going to Hogwarts, and they're there all damn day, hanging out with their friends, and that's cool. I absolutely think it's amazing. But think about those group of people and what they want, and they want something, right? And it ain't Fantastic Beasts. They want something, and you say, "Oh, we're gonna make a TV show," and you're like, "Oh, here it comes," and then the announcement is, "It's a game show." I'm sorry, what?
No.
It's a Harry Potter trivia show. And you're like,
no. Sorry, no.
Who wants this? I get that on you. There's every other YouTube channel has a Harry Potter trivia. Like You have a trivia night at your local freaking bar. Like, no, you have a platform. Give me a series.
Right.
Do you not even know what your competitor's doing? Look over at Netflix.
They
Give me a series.
They know what Netflix is doing. They just can't figure out how to
No.
replicate it.
They're like,
it's so
look
weird.
at those guys from Game of Thrones. They know what they're doing.
We're laughing.
Laughing. Yes, you're laughing. Maniacal laugh. Laugh.
It's like I said, I've told you this before. I think I told you this for the first time like 6 years ago, but like I feel really bad, really bad for those hardcore DC Comics fans, because there is no chance, zero chance that this is corrected anytime in the near or distant future.
I disagree. So we've talked about this, and here's why. And I've kind of, I'm not going to say that I have firsthand knowledge because I was only on the set of Black Adam because my son was doing a
look. But a movie with Dwayne Johnson is a movie with Dwayne Johnson.
But listen,
you cannot say that a movie with Dwayne Johnson is the overall arc of a series, because that is clearly not the case.
No, but what you got to understand is so you got to also take into consideration this guy. He was injected into the Fast and the Furious franchise, and when that happened,
it great again.
It made it, well, even before he came in, it had a rejuvenation, but it wasn't great. When he stepped in, it was like, whoa, it went, now they went into space in the last one. They went into space.
Spoilers, bro.
Spoiler alert. Space. All right. They went to the moon before Dogecoin. Okay.
So like this is what I struggle with, because Fast and the Furious is weird, because the really movies weird. that are part of the main line are all good. This is the J.J. Abrams conundrum. You come back to this and you go, these guys are out there and they're making good movies. But when we say good movies, we're talking like 6, 7 out of 10, 2.5, 3-star films. You gotta also
realize the genre.
But those make money. They make money.
I realize it's almost this way, like, and this happens a lot. Like, for example, go back, and this is going to be a weird comparison, but I'm going to stand by it. I'm sticking with it. 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. The original pilot episodes for this series, I think it was like 5 episodes where it's like all cohesive. It explains to you the Turtles plot. Every episode connects to the one previous. It hints at the Shredder's backstory. The Shredder is actually menacing. Like, there's actually a threat. They showed him he put a knife in Splinter's back to make it seem like he was going to murder someone. These are some, like, especially for an 80s cartoon, there's some pretty significant tones. Not I say it's super dark, but
if you had read the comic books back in the 80s,
it was way darker,
super dark.
But think about how cohesive those episodes were, and every episode connected to the next. Then cut to season 2. All of a sudden, the animation, which I didn't know, by the way, this is a fun fact that I just learned. Those episodes, and this is why the quality was so great. The animation was done by Toei Animation, who does Dragon Ball and and I'm like, oh my God, no wonder I was predispositioned to love Dragon Ball Z. So anyway.
It's not just that. It's that it's not just the animation was improved, it was everything was improved. Yeah. They understood that, like, you can't tell an interconnected chain story in child cartoon form. It doesn't work. Kids don't have the attention span.
So then they go to the second season and like, oh, we got the audience. Essentially, that's the pilot season. So it was all done together. After that, they're like, throw quality out the window, and animation quality goes down. And then every episode, Shredder is like Cobra Commander. Oh, I'm bumbling idiot. And so you realize how quickly, like, oh, but like you said, mass produced, and they go, oh, we're going into syndication. So 5-episode original, season. The second season's 13 episodes, and they say, hey, we need 65 episodes for your third season, otherwise it's not going to syndication. So they're just pumping out episodes, like, oh, put it in the toy, and that's what happened. So with Fast and the Furious,
it's still good. Like, so this is the thing that bugs me the most about this is, like, yes, clearly they were mass producing episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I wouldn't say
it was still
to a kid,
good.
It's tolerable.
Good.
But, like-
No. Like, so here's the thing: is like there are genuinely bad TV series and genuinely bad films, and the thing about them is that almost nobody has seen them because they are bad.
Fair enough. Well,
Like-
I mean, yeah, I guess you can argue it that way. It was still good because kids were still taking it in. It was still popular. It was
It's
every
so
episode, no matter what. it
so
was
much
still going crazy.
merchandise,
But-
so much.
So look at Fast and the Furious. By that same stretch, you could argue, well, the quality's gotten better because the technology's gotten better, but the story is practically non-existent. It's soap operatic at
about
to be able to family. You never had your car.
I got to be honest. I love Vin Diesel, but he
I
doesn't have any
do, I
range. He
do,
doesn't
I
have any
do.
range.
No, that's not true. He actually does. That's what's disappointing. He
Well,
actually- have you
okay, so
seen
like
freaking,
yes, in Babylon AD, Vin Diesel was playing a character and he was doing it really well, and nobody has seen that movie
what,
except for you and me.
Oh my God, what is this freaking movie? Jesus. That's that Matchstick Man. I think he was in that. That was okay. There was another.
He was in
movie
Boiler
played
Room
a lawyer.
too, and he was playing a character in Boiler Room.
There's a movie
Like-
he played where he played some lawyer with like receding hairline and like it looked completely out of the normal, and he did fantastic. I mean, come on, Groot. He says the same line in 150 different iterations, and it's.
I am
pretty
not
damn good.
trying to take anything away from Vin Diesel. I am telling you he has a range. It is not a broad range.
Oh God, Saving Private Ryan. Nobody remembers he was in that.
Yeah. Again, like realistically speaking,
But
you
you
know,
look
like-
at the first movie, and essentially it's what is this from the 80s with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. It's Point Break. It's Point Break, but with cars, and that's fine. Point Break was a great movie, and that's what
not
Fast and
Point Break.
Furious is.
it's not
Dude,
Point Break
it's
with
Point
cars.
Break.
It's like
It's
what
the same
it's like
thing.
what if a philosopher watched Point Break and decided that it needed to be a series?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think anybody ever imagined it to be a series. Like it was just supposed to be the first one, and then it did well because at the time, car racing was really a big thing. Like I remember, like I was in Miami when they filmed part 2. I was in high school, and like all of the cars that
We
were
were
there,
all driving ridiculously overpowered cars and
well, not
getting
me. I was
into
driving my parents' Chevy Astro,
all kinds of trouble.
which by
Yeah,
the
you
way
were.
had a mattress in the back because it didn't have any seats. Oh, Jesus Christ. So like my friends, they would go racing and we would go to the races in the Chevy Astro van. And my cousin who had his mother's, what did she drive? She drove like I don't even know, Voyager? I don't know. But we were there and we pull up like jokingly, like, oh, we're gonna race vans. And they were like, the hell are you guys doing? And we'd sit there 85 miles an hour, like the car's rattling, like it's gonna fall apart. And it was hilarious, man. Like we would go there and and all those people, all of their cars got to be in the movie. So we got to watch them film it. And arguably, I think the worst film in the entire series is Too Fast, Too Furious. The movie was utter, complete garbage.
Yeah.
Because
No,
all it was
so, like,
doing was saying, hey, that
e-
first one was successful. Do it again. And Vin Diesel was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Even
Everybody
Hero was
hates
trash.
Tokyo Drift except that Tokyo Drift
Actually,
is a better
Tokyo
movie.
Drift is a great movie. It's
Yeah,
the only
it's
one that
a
actually has racing in it.
and
They
it
were
has
actually
a
driving the cars.
it has a plot that advances and characters that have like
I
development.
felt
so
like
weird.
Lucas Black got screwed because when they said, "Oh, we're gonna film that after credit scene where Vin Diesel comes in," he was like, "God damn it, I'm done." And that's exactly what happened. People either thought it's not gonna work or Vin Diesel's got the next movie, and that's what happened. And Lucas Black didn't show back up until I think this most recent one, and even then
Seven.
he was
It was 7.
yeah, and he had a bit part, bro. Like
Yeah.
they didn't even give him a permanent spot on the
But
team.
But he's a nobody. Like
They-
he
Man.
they created an entire TV show around him and he fell off it. Like what? What? How?
You know what I found out? Like part of it had a lot to do with his accent, because they wanted him to lose the accent, and he refused because he felt like, and I respect him for it in a sense. He felt like there weren't enough rednecks, or like I don't say rednecks because maybe it's offensive, but like like people that speak in like a like strong Southern twang, and
Yeah,
like,
he's
he felt like that
but
wasn't represented enough.
he's like Bayou for real.
Yeah, but it's a very specific Southern accent. Like it's
Yeah.
Bayou, so like it's not. That's not Alabama. It's not Florida, and then Central Florida is a whole other thing. But it's just I guess for these executives, because they just didn't want it, and so
Right.
they were like, oh, this guy's not playing ball, and so they basically just sidelined him. So it's not really his fault. I think it sucks because, like I said, I think Tokyo Drift was a genuinely good film. I really do. I think it
Yeah.
felt a lot like the first one. It felt like a real film.
I come back and I struggle about this because They
I'm glad they never
literally
brought Bow
they
up.
built an entire NCIS around him because they were like, well, we have an opportunity to do a new NCIS. Where should we set it? And they're like, oh, well, Lucas Black is a great actor. Let's get him and do it in New Orleans. And then they did.
Didn't they
And then
like
he
kill
fell
him on
off
his
the
own
show.
show?
It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Like like I said, I feel bad for the guy. I feel like
Yeah.
I do.
And it
But
wasn't
then
like he wasn't good on the show.
no. In
Like,
fact, I think when they killed his character, it was at the height of his popularity, which a lot of
yeah.
people were like, "What did he do?" And I think he came out and said it was nothing. It was just like it wasn't working for whatever reason. It just wasn't working.
Yeah. It's so weird. And the flip side of this is like, it became clear how good he was as an actor when you put him against CCH Pounder and Scott Bakula, who are both like world-class talents.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Bakula. I mean,
Yeah.
that's hard. That's
like
tough, bro.
again,
That's tough.
this
And
is one of those things that like you
and
don't
it's on
understand,
TV.
and it has to be backroom politics. It has to be backroom
Yeah, I'm
politics.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. And again, I think it had a lot to do with them trying to tell his character go in a certain direction, and he probably pushed back a little bit. Or maybe another actor. Who knows? But I will say that the series, I think was I mean they were doing good as it kept growing, kept expanding. All of a sudden they did a callback to Tokyo Drift and suddenly said, oh, by the way, the guy you thought that it was this random murder that happened on, but no, it's Jason Statham. We're making it bigger, and it just kept growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then The Rock gets into some beef with Vin Diesel, and he says, you know what? I made your franchise. And Vin Diesel's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I made this franchise. And somebody in the back's like, Lucas Black made the franchise. And so
Nobody said that, by the way. Like, this is, again, I come back to like the weirdest part about the entire Tokyo Drift debate.
But Tokyo Drift
like,
was arguably the revival. Like,
right.
If the movie wasn't such a cult hit, part 4 would have never happened. That's the reality.
Yeah, no, for real.
So,
and Han would never have been such a major character. Like, but again, I come back to like, Lucas Black is a better actor than this series deserves. And people hated the movie he was in because it had character development and a discernible plot and actual racing.
So back to the Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson beef. So Dwayne Johnson is a workaholic, dude. Like absolute workaholic. And Vin Diesel he's kind of he's enjoying his success more than The Rock probably thought he should. And so they did not see eye to eye on where the series should go. And obviously, Vin Diesel's like, well, I'm running the show, so this is what we're going to do. And you can see a little bit in the sidelining of Hobbs in that second to last film that he was in, where he gets injured midway through the film, and then he doesn't show up until the very end. And you're like, I feel like that wasn't what was originally in the plan. But he ends up coming back, and then he's still there. But ultimately, I feel like The Rock, he realized, you know what, I can not only am I going to tell you that I can take this franchise in my own direction and it's going to work, but you're going to
I say this with
did.
no disrespect intended whatsoever. The Fast franchise is soap opera for 30-year-old men.
Yeah, I could see that.
And what goes on in the background, to me, as somebody who was around that industry growing up, feels like it's staged. I do not believe that Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel hate each other. I don't believe.
No, I honestly don't think that they hate each other. I really don't. I do think there's an element of playing it up. There is, mm-hmm. But I also believe that maybe to some extent the relationship isn't as cordial as it is with some of the other actors.
Yeah, I don't think they hang out voluntarily with each other, but at the same time, like these guys are both like very seasoned pros.
I think
they have a lot of mutual interests.
I think that one of the problems was exacerbated by Tyrese Gibson, because Tyrese may not have been cued to that relationship, but that's the thing. Tyrese, he's emotional and he reacts emotionally. So if he heard something that wasn't necessarily true, he exacerbates it by getting on there and going, "Why you gonna be mad at me, bro?" And like it just spirals out of control. So what was one thing becomes another thing, and then it ends up being much more drama than either one of these people intended it to be. And I think The Rock knew that, and that's why he said, you know what, I'm gonna just go do this thing over here. That way I don't have to worry about it. And he proved point to success. I can go do Hobbs and Shaw, and I don't, he didn't even want Fast and the Furious Presents on it. He just wanted to be Hobbs and Shaw, but the studio was insist that it be there, and he was like, it doesn't need it. This movie sells itself, and they didn't have any faith in that, and it did amazing. Now, when I say that, I look at how the DC universe is doing, right? And yes, there's been a few misses, there's been a few significant hits. Shazam did a lot better than people thought it was going to do. And some of the bigger titles didn't do as well as they thought, and the lesser titles did phenomenal. Wonder Woman did amazing. Aquaman blew expectations away. And now you have, this movie
that, by the way.
Yes, you did. You did, in fact. You were like, this is going to be the most amazing ever. I said, no, listen, man. I said, just because James Cameron was supposedly attached in Entourage doesn't mean anything. And I was 1,000% wrong. I wouldn't say 1,000% because I knew it was going to be good. I just didn't think it was going to be that good. I really didn't.
So this is the thing that I'm sitting there.
Not great.
I'm sitting there, and I don't view the superhero films as a genre, and I don't know. I know a lot of people do. I view them as, like comic books have always been about exploring ridiculous genres, in a way that is approachable and relatable and explainable. So like you can do a Spider-Man Western that doesn't look anything like a spaghetti Western, but it's a Western because it's literally Spider-Man goes out, saves the day. The people.
What was Logan? Logan was Western.
Yeah, it was Western. Like you can do any genre in comic books, in superhero comic books, and that translates to film and TV because, WandaVision was fundamentally a horror sitcom.
Yes, it was actually a fusion
that culminated.
Old TV, and it gave you that sense of familiarity, but it also had that creeping psychological horror to it that you're like, this is pretty twisted. And every episode, it just a little more unraveled of that darkness, and it was fantastic. Yep. It was almost, it was so difficult to pull off, and they did it. They absolutely did it.
I think, and this is what I come back to. Like when people take on these mega properties and they do not view them correctly because they try and say this is a part of the superhero genre. Well, what is the superhero genre, Paul?
Exactly. You're putting it into a box.
Can you explain that to me? What is the superhero genre?
The superhero genre to me is when somebody says, hey, we've got to tell this formulaic origin story of kid gets powers, does this. Like that's superhero genre. And when you have movies like, Spider-Man Homecoming that completely goes, we don't know how to tell you this kid's origin. Here he is. Live life. They don't even mention it in the film. I think he has it in conversation that goes, yeah, I got the last spider. And that's it. That's all they ever do. You look at Thor, the first Thor, which by the way, so underappreciated. The entire story, he has no powers. Mm-hmm. And he comes from a land of people who all have power. Mm-hmm. And the whole movie, he has no powers. And the setup is that he has to basically learn self-sacrifice for a greater good in order to become worthy of receiving said powers once again. Like, holy crap.
The character's arc in the MCU is so underrated. I think until Fat Thor, people really didn't understand that character is not a himbo idiot. Well, he is something more and more relevant to storytelling than just simply being the big
I don't think that
Superman for
people
the
think
MCU.
That he's just this dumb oaf, and they don't realize that what this person is doing is essentially, and maybe it's not even on purpose, his personality is allowing him, that's how he deals with all these extreme situations. By the end of Thor Ragnarok, yes, Thor Ragnarok is funny, but that's because the only way that movie could be presented is in that humorous way without it being utterly depressing. He loses everything. His mom just died. He thought his brother just died. His dad dies. His best friend, which is a hammer, dies. And, literally, his two of his friends from the Warriors 3 get axed, unceremoniously. And then
Rip Carl Urban in the MCU.
I know. He did actually, what? That he did at least go out awesome because one, he played a good character. Like he really did. The executioner was done really well. And had he not even made the turn at the end, it would have still been fine. But the turn at the end just made it. You were like, oh my god! Like Taika Waititi knows what he's doing. But then
at the same time, you know that he went specifically to Carl Urban, and Carl Urban agreed specifically because it was Taika Waititi, and he said, "And you die at the end."
And he's like, oh.
Oh, okay.
So where's my pen? But like, you look at and like you hit the nail on the head. When you get to Bro Thor or whatever, Vet Thor, whatever we call it, when you get to that point, you realize that this is the point where the adventure stopped for him, and now he had to process all this because in Infinity War, he's so resolute in his mission because that's what's keeping him from dealing with what just happened. Right. He has to go out and kill Thanos. The minute that Thanos' head is gone, that's it. Now he has to deal with everything, and that's what he does for the next 5 years: is drink himself stupid and just wallows in pity because he feels to be a complete failure, which is why I think Love and Thunder,
Valkyrie keeps kicking him while he's down, which I think is just
so
perfect.
I honestly think that it's a smart move that Loki is not in Love and Thunder because it actually allows Thor to process his grief and grow in this film. And you finally get, I wouldn't say an arc because he's been going on an arc, but maybe a completion of that arc leading into whatever goes next. Because whatever iteration of Thor goes forward will be a drastically different character.
Well, I think we have two. I think we have two. I think this is, Thor steps back and takes on the mantle of Donald Blake and becomes one of the alternate Thors, whichever one they decide is the one to go with.
So are you implying that at the end of this he chooses to become a Midgardian, like decides I love Midgard so much I want to be on Earth and live out the rest of his days with Jane Foster?
Sure, but at the same time, I think at the end of this you have Jane Foster Thor as well, because you don't.
I think they'll.
You don't conclude in Love and Thunder that character arc.
No, I think people don't realize that that Thor Ragnarok wasn't the conclusion of a trilogy. Thor Ragnarok was a reboot. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of wherever Thor's arc is going forward. Like that's why literally everyone was killed. Everything was wiped. The old was wiped away.
Right. Now except for Jane Foster.
Yes.
The only surviving character.
Which in a way leads his arc in a similar way.
No, that's not true.
Captain America.
There's another surviving character.
Well, there's two. Let's go from WandaVision.
You're right. Yeah.
And
there's two surviving characters from Thor's past.
They will probably bring back Edward Selvig, or is it Edward Selvig? Whatever, Selvig. I don't remember his first name, but Selvig. They'll bring Selvig back for sure. The last time we saw him was Looney Bin in Thor: The Dark World, and he was talking about Marvel. He was the one that was talking about the multiverse. He was literally the first character in the MCU to say the word multiverse. So
you think they bring back Eric Selvig?
Eric Selvig, Jesus, there we go, Eric Selvig. Yeah,
I think he's probably dead in the continuity.
No,
although maybe
he was totally alive at the end of Thor: The Dark World.
You know what? I bet he's recruited by Sword.
Oh, I'm 1,000%, and I think that's how they'll reintroduce, because they introduced Darcy, and she's now associated with Sword, and so I'm sure that when she gets there, he's already there, and she's like, when did you get here? And he's like, it'll be tongue in cheek, or maybe she says, hey, I know this guy, and she brings him on board. But Sword's definitely going to recruit Selvig.
Well, right? Yeah. No, I think that the build to Sword, and I hope they play this correctly. That the reveal of where has Captain America been, and when he's saying on the moon, he's like, no, seriously, he's on the actual moon. There's a base there, and they're fighting aliens. That's the reveal.
I'm willing. I mean, that in the past. They have,
and it's old Steve, by the way, not Chris Evans, young Steve.
I'm willing to bet that. So the only thing that would be even better than that is if it's old Steve, but he's there, with an eye patch, cigar chomping, like Nick Fury-esque, or not eye patch because maybe that's too on the nose, and they're definitely not going to do cigar because I think Disney has a thing against smoking. But he's in that smoke. Like weird chair
it's
that
still
Nick
Steve
Fury
Rogers,
had.
right? It's still Steve
Yeah.
Rogers, right? Yeah.
But I'm willing to bet that I wouldn't doubt if they went like Steve Rogers, director of Shield route. Like,
Well, they'll
yeah.
yes, they'll but it'll be Sword, and they'll
Yeah.
100% have that classic cheese ball image where he's sitting in a command chair, and then there's randomly a whole bunch of people behind him just standing there, and you're like, what is this?
Yeah, and he'll probably be like slightly obscuring his face and then like lean back. You're like, that's Captain America.
Yeah.
Like, what? And he's like, no, Steve Rogers.
Yeah. He's like,
And then
no, I
Captain
got
America's
promoted.
behind him, like, no.
Yeah, he's like, I
I'm
got promoted.
Captain
I'm a colonel
America.
now. I
It's
run
Colonel.
Sword.
Colonel America. No, he did. He just skipped rank. Lieutenant Colonel, Major America. No, but
He'll skip rank. 100%.
yeah,
Captain
why
America.
not?
Captain America
He
wasn't
went
his
from a-
actual rank.
He went from a private to a captain. Why not?
Yeah.
And then Bucky's behind him. He's like, I'm still.
The
a
army can
Sergeant.
do whatever it wants to, man.
I'm still an NCO. Damn it. But so
I'm willing to bet that at some point someone is going to be like, we need to correct all of these issues with rank continuity, and they'll be like, oh yeah, no, Bucky's actually a command sergeant major. You're like, what?
He has the longest time in service of any service member ever. So check this, right? Here's my thing. And this is before I forget, because seeing this Stormbreaker behind me just made me realize. So they're going to reintroduce Mjolnir in Love and Thunder. What are your thoughts on that? Like, because a lot of people that I had, like geek circles had all suggested that Loki would bring Mjolnir somehow or across the timeline, and then when he came into this timeline, Mjolnir would somehow come with him, or that Captain America never returned it to the same timeline, and thus that's how Jane fixed it. So just random. Are you thinking
willing
they're
to
going
bet.
to reforge it?
I'm willing to bet that they're going to be very, very cagey on that. I'm willing to bet they're going to say that when somebody takes up the mantle of Thor, Mjolnir is theirs, regardless of whether or not Mjolnir actually exists. And simply by taking up the mantle of Thor, taking up the mantle of the God of Thunder,
So
you receive Mjolnir. Even though it's been destroyed, it just lightning strike and you've got it.
Fair enough. So I'm going to go ahead and assume, and this could be incorrect, but I'm just going to go ahead and make a guess that since Loki isn't going to be in Love and Thunder, that doesn't necessarily, I don't think that it's necessarily
He's busy, man.
He won't be the one that brings the hammer. What I think, and it would be very interesting for Loki's arc, is at the end of Loki, he goes to Asgard. And I think there are already hints that he somehow ends up in Asgard anyway. But I think that he will end up in Asgard, and then he'll look at that hammer. And maybe they won't show it right away. But by the end of the series, maybe after credit scene, a time portal will open, camera will pan up, and you'll see the handle of the hammer, or maybe it'll pan down, and then the time door will close, and it won't show who walked in or out, implying that Loki, one, had become worthy throughout his journey, two, had grown so much as a person, which i.e. would be why he would be worthy, that he didn't want it. Because him being worthy of the hammer would mean he wouldn't want to use it. So taking that and leaving it for his brother in a different timeline, doing the exact thing that he knew the timekeepers, because it's all about them protecting the sacred timeline.
Right.
By doing that, that violates the rules of that timeline, therefore solidifying whatever they were going to do. I think that's how it's going to end, where it'll be somewhat ambiguous, but also very much hinted that he was the one that dropped it there, but never explicitly say. And then in Thor: Love and Thunder, it won't really be addressed other than how the hell did this get here? And, maybe that'll be, something alluded to further. Like, I'm willing to bet that after credit scene in Thor: Love and Thunder will involve Loki, or at least Thor seeing something to do with what Loki was doing. So I don't know if they'll necessarily meet, but I
struggle
know that
with this only because we know that Tom Hiddleston is not interested in signing on for anything significant in future.
I know that, but I know that, like I said, I don't know if it'll necessarily be something where, again, it might not necessarily be him doing anything, like him actually appearing to Thor. It will probably be something more along the lines of like maybe Mobius, or one of like a version of Mobius that survives walking up to Thor and handing him like a file, or even at the time, opens it up and sees Loki was the one that dropped the hammer, and then he's like, what? Like just implying that his brother's out there, and then maybe that sets him off on a course with the Guardians of the Galaxy to go look for his brother somewhere in the universe. But I think by the end of Thor: Love and Thunder, I don't know that he'll stay on Midgard. I think that he will go off in space. It's already been implied that he was like heading out with the Guardians, but at Thor: Love and Thunder, I don't think that they're like. I think maybe he rode around with them for a little bit and then he comes back to Earth. But I think that that'll be the point that he decides, you know what, actually I want to roll with these guys, because it was implied in Endgame, but it doesn't look like that's where Thor: Love and Thunder is going. So I think by the end of that film, he'll say, you know what, it's time for me to go see the universe. If he doesn't decide to stay on Earth permanently, I don't know. Like that honestly, with Waititi, with Taika Waititi's like his sensibilities, it really can go in a number of directions, and wherever it goes, I feel like it's gonna be beautiful.
Well, I get the impression that Guardians 3 was supposed to have manifested itself earlier than it has. But at the same time, as long as Guardians 3 comes down and everybody's be like, oh, hey, wait, Thor's in this. That's weird.
Back to my main point earlier though. The Rock, I think, is going to be able to pull some sway with DC. If that movie is as successful as he's betting on it being, and as successful as I do not think anybody is expecting, I think that movie, a lot of people are expecting it's going to be good, because that movie's been in the works since 2014. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Black Adam. Like, they're like firsthand experience. I can tell you, for being on set, every single thing is like to the extreme with perfectionism. So either this movie is going to be amazing or it's going to be utterly terrible. And so I don't think it's going to be terrible. I really don't. So I think that how successful that film does will determine where DC goes. Because I think they don't have a choice. I think The Rock's going to be like, he's going to have like the Infinity Gauntlet for DC. Like,
so I will say this. I will say this, as much as I believe that Dwayne Johnson doesn't make bad films, at the same time, everything about this tells me that he's going to be held down by the content. And I will say this, there have been a surprising amount of Egyptian gods films in the last 10 years, and they have all done way worse than expected. And, he has to deal with the fact that they won't give him Henry Cavill. So
yeah, they really don't want to give him that, and he really has been. Right. That's what he wants more than anything. Like he said that more than anything, he wants to fight Henry Cavill Superman, not just Superman.
Right.
But Henry Cavill Superman, and they will not give him this. Like it's depressing.
And I come back to like you got a character here that exists for two purposes in the broader DC universe, and this movie touches on neither.
But maybe Henry Cavill has it figured out. He realized that DC only ever, or excuse me, DC, Warner Brothers specifically, only ever likes something when Marvel does it first. Mm-hmm. And so he says, I'm going to go play Captain Britain over in Marvel. And they're like, oh, who is this guy? Hire him. Like, that's Henry Cavill. Like, why haven't we put him in a film? Get this guy immediately. Yeah. He should play Superman. And then he goes, flap.
The idea of that is hilarious. At the same time, like, I think he's just done with it, man.
Probably.
Like I legitimately think that he's looking at the nonsense that's going on with DC, and meanwhile, he's on a Netflix series and they're treating him great. And
The Witcher season 2 is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
he's got like other people.
He's got actual work outside of that. Like we already know they're making a sequel to Enola Holmes, which is, by the way, a very good movie that you should go watch.
I thought it was great. I loved
it. There's going to be a sequel, which means that Henry Cavill is going to be in it because he's fucking Sherlock Holmes. Which, by the way, perfect.
Oh my god! Like, I watched this and I was like, man, this is really great.
We've had some really good Sherlock Holmes in the last 20 years, but he owned it in a way that made the fact that he's a big beefy Sherlock Holmes very
Exactly. I was like,
believable.
I'm wondering how, and I was like, no, he absolutely pulled it off. He
Yep.
absolutely did. It was good.
Well, again, like the original character of Sherlock Holmes was very big relative to everybody else in England,
Well, what's
even in the
funny is
original
that
stories.
you find if you look at like all the different actors who, at least in the modern iterations, who have played Sherlock, they've all taken something from it. So like Downey upplayed, the quirkiness and like the the darker aspects of his personality to humorous ways, but effectively. It was still very easily for you to understand this. And Benedict Cumberbatch played it in a way that was sociopathic, which was also very much in line, less humorous. I shouldn't say less. It was humorous in a different way. It was a darker humor, but also, played up the addiction in a different way. So yeah, I think in that series, like he was a chain smoker rather than heroin addict, and the addiction was more alluded to being like the cases, but it was still heavily implied there was something deeply disturbed with this person, and they just both did it very, very good. And so seeing both of those things, you're like, okay, I know Henry Cavill's good. What are you going to bring to the table on this? And he did it splendidly, splendid. I was like, wow, I was genuinely impressed, because it's so hard to not try and mimic what others have done, and there's a lot of pressure in it. And I think,
But at the same time, you're talking about a role that has been worn so well for so long, but with a different emphasis in Enola Holmes, where the character of Sherlock Holmes doesn't have to carry the film.
I think my favorite part in the film was when he grabbed his sister and he said, "Do you bleed?" And he's
Yeah, he's playing. Yeah, he's definitely playing a darker energy Holmes. I
loved it.
I feel like he's also playing, the side of Holmes that we all kind of, read between the lines when you're reading Doyle stories, and you go like, this dude is a serial killer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like he's one bad choice away from being a serial killer, and I think that's why he's so good at finding serial killers. But another thing that I thought was great, and a lot of people don't give credit. I'm not going to talk about this movie because it's been talked about a lot. Mission Impossible, the last one that came out, that movie was fantastic, and I don't really like most of the series, but
All
that
right.
movie, the adrenaline in that film, and also like how the action was done, like I felt like I was in a movie theater for 15 minutes. I was like, holy, like I'm like, it was intense, and part of that, a lot of it's the direction. Like I'm Tom. I give credit to Tom Cruise where it's due. He does good stunts.
Tom Cruise does good work.
Yeah, he does good work. But Henry Cavill was a great part of that movie.
Right.
In most of the films, the villain is, it doesn't matter because you're watching Tom and his team do their thing. But Henry Cavill was very memorable. Like he set the standard in those films for like, this is a Bond-esque villain in a Mission Impossible movie where the villains are, nobody cares. Nobody goes, like you go to a Bond movie for Bond and the villains. But you go to a Mission Impossible movie for Tom Cruise and the stunts and his team, really. But that movie, you're like, wow, he stood out. He really did stand out in that film. I think he did a fantastic job.
Right. And so the other parts of this is that, I've watched, so there's a movie I watched. It's not a great movie, but, and that's A Night Hunter, by the way. It's not a great movie, but the performances in the film from Cavill and the guy who plays, spoiler alert, the guy who plays the serial killer. It's it's interesting because you have these two guys who are playing so deep in a film that is not that deep. It's just not. I mean, like you hired Alexandra Daddario to play the other detective. Really?
Huh.
Like clearly this is like, we have a pretty decent plot. We're gonna throw it up there.
So
We're
what
gonna
you're
make some
saying
money
is
off of it.
it's like putting Dennis Hopper, Bob Hoskins, and John Leguizamo in Super Mario Bros.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like that.
Just
However,
amazing
comma,
actors. I just rewatched this, by the way. My kids were like, I want it, because my kids are like obsessed with my little one now. He's obsessed with Super Mario, because my older one bought some Mario Legos. And by the way, the Mario Lego sets are so cool because they like interact. You put him on like a red surface and he goes on fire. It's like, "Wah, wah, wah." Like it's so funny. But anyway, the kid's obsessed with Mario now. And so I said, actually there's a movie, like jokingly. And they're like, oh, put it on. I'm like, oh, okay. And I put this on. I'm like, this is
so if you really want to scar
really
your kids, you remember this because we both grew up in New York City. You remember the Saturday morning
the Super
cartoon
Mario Brothers
Super
Show.
Mario Brothers with Captain Lou Albano.
Super Show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God. I used to
so
watch
like
that
again, I come
religiously,
back to
man.
like when you're making stuff for kids, there's a level of like campiness that is acceptable that simply is never going to work
I'm
if you're aiming
wondering
at
if I
adults.
accept that as a kid because I was from New York and that seems so normal to me. Whereas some kid in Arkansas sees that, he's like, what is this?
Yeah, right. Yeah, a couple of Italian plumbers
that?
who travel to
Huh?
other worlds through toilets is just normal for New Yorkers.
I don't know. I don't know, man. But like that, yeah, I've looked for it and I think it was on Netflix for a while, but it's not there now. I've looked for it and you know what? I will find it and I will score them.
The Super Mario Brothers show.
Super Show.
Yeah.
They have like a rap and everything. Oh
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, it's the
Oh
Super
my
Show.
God.
Yeah. And yeah. Danny Wells played Luigi, by the way.
Yes. Oh my God. Classic.
like
So classic.
what?
So watching the movie, right? Like I'm sitting there and I'm watching this, like I'm actually sitting down. I'm watching. I mean, my wife's watching this, we're also. I'm like, the premise behind this isn't so bad. Like the execution, but the premise in this film is not so bad. It just wasn't good. But like the actors are carrying this film, and like you can see that, like in theory, like in the screenplay, whoever wrote the screenplay was like, come on, this is some smart stuff. And you're like, actually, yeah. And then when you execute it, you're like, oh, but it doesn't translate. But you could see that they really had something there. It just didn't come together. And I'm like, watch this. I'm like, this kind of makes me sad. They had a lot. It just didn't translate correctly. But I mean, it's really not a bad premise. It's a little high concept, evolution, spawn. Like they really went out of their way to define this mushroom kingdom that I don't think, Nintendo ever really gave a crap. They're just like, the pixel look cool, so we did this.
Yeah. Well, so like Nintendo has a design language, and they clearly have a very, very like straightforward design language for Mario, and the whole idea of somebody's trying to unravel that and explain it is so weird.
Like I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that writer's room when they're like, so all right,
I need to stop now.
The king is like
I need to stop now because I just remembered the ultimate episode, the final episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
I don't think I ever saw the last episode.
Has Cyndi Lauper in it.
You gotta be kidding me. Does she play Peach or something like along those lines? Oh, bro, I have to look this up, man. I have to have a thing with closure. I need to know this. I don't know why I've never looked this up. I never even watched Roseanne, and I had to watch the last episode because I needed closure. And then they made a new series, and I was like, God. So I'm looking this up. Are you serious? Cyndi Lauper? I gotta look.
She's playing herself, by the way.
Oh, even better. On the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up. Cyndi Lauper. Oh my God. Oh man, this is fantastic. Oh, wow. Oh, I guess because she was Lou Albano's friend. So
yeah, they became friends on the set of Girls Just Want to Have Fun, where he was playing her dad.
Wow, yeah. Oh my goodness. That is funny.
Like
wow.
Lou Albano, I don't think he gets enough credit, but like the guy was the original wrestling crossover star.
So now, yes, you're right. He was before Hulk Hogan did it, for The Rock.
Yep.
So now I kind of feel like they missed a beat there by not having her cameo in the movie. Or on the soundtrack. Come on, The Goonies, dude, classic. Classic.
Yeah. I come back to like, this is the thing about old films is like there was a point where everybody involved was just like, this is not going to make sense no matter what. Let's just roll. Like,
listen, when I was rewatching this movie and I see these Catholic nuns all in front of an egg as a baby hatches out, I'm like, man, this is who greenlit this, dude. Like, oh my god, it's fantastic, bro. Like I will actually share a funny story. So in the early days of Facebook, back when like Facebook first came out, and like you could add, a lot of people really didn't understand, like they were adding people, right? So you had celebrities who made Facebook pages and they'd have like 5 people because it was like literally the very early days, right? So John Leguizamo added me as a friend on Facebook, right? Like again, very early on. I then tagged him in a poster of Super Mario Brothers movie, and he immediately unfriended me. He was like, hell no, don't remind me of that. Oh, it's classic, man.
I don't blame him. Like,
I was like, I was a kid.
Everybody involved in that movie, wants to bury it.
But you realize why they did that with Bob Hoskins, right? Because he had just come off the tails of freaking Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah. And it was so successful, and they were like, "Oh, hey, do this." And
plus, he kind of looked like a Mario.
I mean, literally, there's probably nobody else who could have played that except maybe like an extreme, ridiculous Danny DeVito, or maybe Joe Pesci. That'd have been fantastic.
Yes, Joe Pesci playing as Mario.
Super Mario. Oh my god! Okay. Are you gonna fix these pipes? Are you talking in it?
Luigi, where's my lunch?
Oh my god. Do I look like some kind of clown to you? Like some sort of Koopa clown to you? Oh my god. That would have been wonderful. Oh my god. In some other multiverse, there is a variant where Joe Pesci is Super Mario. Oh my god. And Sharon Stone is Princess Peach. And Robert De Niro is Luigi. Mario.
Robert De Niro is Luigi.
Mario.
I buy it.
Mario.
I buy it.
Mario. Come on, Mario. De Niro, man. Come on. I've lost it. I've lost my mind because somewhere that image is. I'm ruined for life, bro. She is Super Mario.
The metaverse has a great Super Mario Brothers movie.
The only thing that could be more hilarious than that would be Dennis Hopper playing Koopa. Oh wait, he did.
Yeah. 100%.
Which, by the way,
he played King Koopa instead of Bowser, which is different.
Yes, very different. Which also, by the way, in the opening scene, or actually the first scene that they reveal him in, which I did not realize, in order to allude to Bowser's colors, he's wearing an army uniform with spikes on the shoulder and an orange shirt underneath. I was like, oh, how did I miss this? Yes. Fantastic. By the way, he wasn't playing Koopa. He was playing Trump.
Having grown up in that era, 100%. We had all seen Donald Trump on public access.
No, I mean really rewatch this, and I feel like the Trump campaign took cues from this, and they were watching this movie and they're going, "You got to talk like this."
Hopper gave one interview about the Super Mario Brothers movie. He gave one, they were like, "What was your inspiration for King Koopa?" And he says, "I was playing a businessman descended from reptiles." And he just looks at the camera and he's done. Like he's never gonna say anything.
Like it's so great though, because he really just plays the crap out of it. Like even though you think, oh, he's phoning, no, he's playing the absolute shit out of that role. And Hoskins too. Like they really, I mean, even Leguizamo. And I get Leguizamo because he was younger, he was hungry. But like Hoskins and Hopper didn't have to do that. They really didn't. And they really went for it.
I think you're misremembering Bob Hoskins' career.
Well, I mean, he always did
he
great.
worked.
Yeah.
He worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. He worked a lot. Like not like
And
Christopher Lee
yeah,
a lot, but like he was trying to get there a lot.
yeah, and it's because like he's one of those actors that like Gary Oldman. He did so much that people just don't realize how much he did, and he was fantastic in literally everything.
Right.
Literally
But
everything. He played good guys. He played bad guys. Like he just like Carl Urban, and more importantly, Carl Urban's chin.
right, yes, exactly. Carl Urban's chin is overdue for an Oscar award. Come on. Seriously, guys. Um
I mean, he
I,
should have played
but I mean,
Batman.
you know,
The
Bob
chin was
Hoskins
there. It was the Batman. Come
Bob
on.
Hoskins was, you know, never really a feted movie star. You know, he won a
No,
Golden Globe back when those were real things and mattered.
he was an actor. Like he really was. Like that was
But he won
it
it for
was.
Mona Lisa, which nobody has seen, and that's a shame because it's an
Actually, I haven't
amazing
seen it.
movie. It's an amazing movie.
I have to now see. I got to put them on my list.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, it's really a shame when you think about, especially now. Like there's so many actors like from back then that like if given some of the material now that they would just destroy some of these films. Like you'd be like, oh my god. Like I'm imagining like if Dennis Hopper was still alive, like what Marvel villain could this guy play? Like I mean, Mephisto. It's too easy. That's too easy. But no,
He
there's
would
so
have
much
he
that
would
some
have
of these
played
guys
Odin 100%. They would not have gotten. Yeah,
actually, yeah,
they
that
would have
wouldn't have
gotten him
been
for
bad.
that.
That
Yeah.
wouldn't have been bad. Outside the fact that Odin wouldn't have an accent, it would have been bad. He might have played Zeus, which I think Russell Crowe's playing now. Did you hear about that? So Russell Crowe's going to play Zeus in
I buy it.
Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, okay. And so there are rumors that Henry Cavill is being looked at for either Hercules or
I heard
or Captain
that
Britain.
I heard that they were going with Hercules.
I'm going to imagine that they're going to go with Hercules because I think
Give me
that
1
they
second,
are
man.
going to, go a different direction with Captain Britain.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
look,
No. So like,
you just wanted to
it's
clap from
too
9
easy of a
3/4.
parallel. Whereas having Cavill play Hercules allows him to play a wastrel, you know, a slacker, a casual.
And I'm still disappointed that we never got to see Bob Hoskins play the Penguin. Like that would have been amazing. Or even James Gandolfini. Which, side note, I just saw the preview for the Many Saints of Newark, which I don't know if you were a Sopranos fan, but it's a movie, like a prequel to Sopranos. It looks good. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks good. And it's got John Bernthal, and I'll watch anything with that dude.
Sure, but that's because John Barenthal plays you in movies.
Spoiler alert. Oh man. So I've heard a rumor that the next season of Westworld will come out in 2028, alongside the next season of The Expanse.
I heard about the Expanse's production problems.
Yeah.
I think that's going to get resolved faster.
Oh, then Westworld for sure.
Yeah.
I think the problem with Westworld is that they can't get the entire cast or production to work together, and the schedule is so tight. So they film in this extent. It was already a very long production, and COVID just wrecked that. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, the
if four
Expanse also
seasons
gets
at
the
end.
cheat, like because they can just be like, all right, everybody get onto this one soundstage, and you have 4 scenes together in this entire season, so we'll just film all of those now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, all right.
Yeah, it's again, we'll see how things go. But anyway, I think that's a good point to break it because Dennis Hopper, you can't really top that. Dennis Hopper, Bob Hoskins, like I want to go now. I want to watch. I want to say that I want to watch the Super Mario like movie and finish it, but no, I want to go watch the last episode of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show with Cyndi Lauper. Like, I'm sorry, like this is taking priority now. So.
Yeah. No, it's so like again, I come back to like there are 65 episodes of that show, and it was only on for 1 year.
Oh.
Like it was a daily. It was a daily.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
it's nuts. It's really nuts to think about.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. I mean, I remember watching that show like religiously. Like that was insane. Those guys
Yeah,
were working pretty hard, man.
yeah.
And
No, they
it's such a
again, I
weird
guess
show.
like you have a bunch of hungry actors and a guy like Captain Lou who had the work ethic of 45 immigrants.
80s TV is just so weird. Like so weird. Like shows like Alf. You remember Alf? You
Yeah.
know that show ended on a bummer? Like it ended with like the army showing up and like
Yeah,
arresting him. Like
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Oh
No,
my God.
well, that was the great debate. Like that was where it all started, where people got very averse to like ending on down notes because Alf ended on a down note, and then people just never talked about it again.
Yeah, it was like
They're like,
like that's it's
because it was appointment TV, just like other shows that you actually do remember from the 80s, where everybody went to work the next day and talked about Alf. And
yeah,
then
like
it ended and no one ever talked
you
about
know
it
what other
again.
TV show did that? Dinosaurs.
No,
Yes, they all died.
dinosaur,
But everybody knew that's where it was going.
right? Yeah, but dinosaurs never got there. That was the funny part.
Yeah, I know. They were like, oh man, that's too funny. But yeah, so what was that Night Hunter? I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't even know. That was with Henry Cavill, right? I'm gonna look that up. And then
Yeah,
what was this
I think
movie
it's
that you said with
Netflix.
Hoskins?
Oh, Mona Lisa.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna
So Mona Lisa is weird because it's a neo noir film in 1986. So it's a real trip.
I'm gonna end up looking at that. So
But
yeah.
but Bob Hoskins played
Oh,
he
Michael
played
Caine's in
a
that?
variety of
Wait,
character types, but he was really known for playing gumshoes and detectives.
yeah. Which is why, like, it was no surprise when Hugh Frank brought it back. The only surprise was the fact that it was the type of movie that it was. It was like, oh, that's interesting. But I think that yeah, I'm gonna check that out. But I'm actually going to just to let you know because I think this is hilarious. My mother's birthday was 2 days ago, and we're gonna go celebrate today by throwing axes at a bar.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
an axe
As one
bar.
does.
I know, but like like it's my mom. Like it's totally different from me and my friend. I'm like, oh, like me, my sister, her boyfriend, we're all like gonna take my son Eli. We're all sort of, hey mom. She's like, ah! So sounds like fun. I should record it and see what happens. But anyway, that background, it was when you went into the back, it looked like you were heading into like, platform 9 3/4. Like you just disappeared.
Disappear into the
It was
background.
fantastic. It was perfect. Like I'm gonna edit the video so that's how it ends. You walking off into the bookshelf.
Oh,
Oh man, that's wonderful. Well, anyway, dude, we have to do this again. This
yep.
was great. A lot of fun, and I'll chop this up and send it your way. Make sure you can review it before we post it up and everything. So your
Sounds good,
thumb
man.
disappeared. That was magic.
The virtual backgrounds are really
That's
fun
fantastic,
because
man.
they're so weird.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna start playing with them. I'm gonna definitely do that. Instead
Just
of like,
I
people
will
probably
say
think this
this.
is a fake background. They're like, what's that
I will say this:
rusty
if you are
locker?
doing it, if you're going to use one on stream, make sure that it's one that doesn't have a copyright attached.
Because then your video's gonna get.
Because this does not have a copyright attached to it.
There you go.
Yep.
Wait, is that book? There's a Harry Potter series right there. And I was like, oh yeah.
For real. It's not Harry Potter.
No,
It's just
not even close. It looks like Encyclopedia Britannica from 1996, but
yeah,
only A through F and G through, I don't know. I'm done with this gag.
So, somebody was just like, I have all of these books. They're in a store. I'm just going to take a picture of them. And then they just were on the internet for free.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, dude. So, yeah, I mean, we can probably put a pen in this for either for Friday next week, do the same time, or Saturday. You let me know. But again, thanks for everything, man.
Yeah, my Fridays are busy. I would have a hard stop at 7 on Fridays normally.
All right, so if Saturday's better, we can do that again.
Yeah, I have future plans on Saturdays, but we'll figure it out.
We
man.
can adjust because
scheduled.
I don't think I have anything earlier Saturday. So
Okay.
So we can figure it out. If anything, we'll just play it by ear. There's no reason to
like.
flexible, bro.
this is normal for me, getting on Zoom and talking to people, but like that's because my side hustle is being a professional game player on streams.
That's right.
Like that's I make money, I make money doing that. I shouldn't joke about it because we legitimately do make money, but it's like you make money to pay operational costs, not
I mean, yeah, but
people
it's
are
still,
getting
it
paid.
functions. Like, people don't understand that's like, you know, I don't even want to compare
Because
it
we
to,
make
like,
money, everybody gets a
nonprofits.
free book, you know.
There you go.
Yeah.
As long as it supports what it's going for, then it's working.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying out of pocket costs. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.